Hey, welcome to Live from Dennis's House. On this installment of Celebrity Profiles, we're going to be talking to Slim Jim Phantom, the drummer of the Stray Cats. Stray Cats rose to fame in the 80s. They were from Massapequa, Long Island, and they went to London to seek fame and fortune. They put out 2 albums, came back to the U.S., and that's when they released this album, Built for Speed, a instant classic, and actually, I think one of the greatest albums ever recorded. And, they produced another album after that, Rant and Rave, and other albums. They've been back and forth, and they sold millions and millions of albums, and MTV loved them. They were everywhere during the 80s. And of course, just like every other band, they break up, and since that time, Slim Jim has recorded with everybody. He's played with Lemmy, he's played with Jerry Lee Lewis, Glenn Matlock, Earl Slick, you name it. So we're going to talk to him about all of that. And he has a new book out that just came out last year called A Stray Cat Struts, My Life as a Rockabilly Rebel. So that's going to be exciting. I'd like to see that. I bet he has a lot of good stories on that. So without further ado, we're going to play some music now. And then, we'll talk to Slim Jim and we'll see what's going on. On the phone with us now is Slim Jim Phantom. Hey, Jim, thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Dennis.
Now, I'm hoping that we could wrap up your whole life. I want to go through your whole life from as a little kid all the way up to today in 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. And I want to talk about your new book and everything that's going on now. But I want to start when you were a kid. Now, everybody knows you were influenced by the rockabilly and all that. But what were your other influences? Did you only like rockabilly or did you like other music as well?
No, we kind of came to rockabilly a little bit later. I was... excuse me. I just wanted to be a drummer. That's why started playing at a very early age and knew somehow, some way you wanted to have this as your job. It just seemed like a cool way. Loved playing the drums, loved being with the other guys, and since junior high playing in bands. And I played whatever was the rock music of the day, kind of on the radio. I had a few cousins who were older than me, and they had records. I would just borrow their records and play along to. It was Long Island, so of course they had the Billy Joel album. I learned that one, and maybe the first one, Poor Piano Man, Cold Spring Harbor, probably.
Oh wow!
And Alice Cooper, and my other cousin had the Rolling Stones, and I would borrow. It really just any record that you could kind of play along to and learn from. And my parents had a few like big band records or jazz kind of records just laying around, like Benny Goodman or something like that I could borrow, and I took lessons at the music store, local Massapequa music store. We all did, and just looking for some type of music. I took lessons from an old jazz guy. Mousy Alexander was his name, and he was like a big band guy in the 30s and 40s, and he gave lessons a few train stops down. So I used to take the train to it was Wanto or Belmore or something, and go to his house. And and then we found Elvis Presley, the original Sun recordings. And then he quickly found Eddie Cochran from that and Paul Perkins, and it was just game over. It just changed my life completely. And we were like all in with the fashion and the what we thought the lifestyle was, and we built up a quick following, because we were so outrageous, kind of, it was really from the 50s. We weren't, but no one had ever seen it really.
Yeah, because like you said, at that time in the 70s, New York, Long Island especially, there was nobody listening to rockabilly, like young kids, really, No,
and and the kids that came to see us, and we couldn't get gigs at the regular rock clubs, the Right Track Inn and the Pastimes Pub and Speaks, and there was like a whole circuit of rock clubs on Long Island, and we couldn't get gigs at them because it was too weird,
Right.
Still, even though it's the least weird thing ever because it's the most stripped down American rock and roll there is.
Absolutely.
It was too odd. So we kind of built up our own thing, and we went to like corner bars that didn't even really have stages. We did one in Belmore. We did one in Amityville. There was one out on the island. There was one in Massapequa. We would just play every night of the week. And we built up this following of kids who weren't rockabilly kids. They just liked us,
Right.
We knew that we weren't going to get a record deal particularly that way. And then we would go play once a month in the city, like Max's Kansas City or CBGB's or a place like that, and hope to maybe meet someone in the music business, But we were going on a Tuesday night, fourth on the bill. You're not going to really, make it like that. Yeah. So we moved to England. We just had an adventure. We met some people that thought, oh, you guys would go over great in England. We saw pictures of the music press at the time, and it was crazy. Punk rock, it was taking hold, and we thought it would just be a cool thing to do. So we kind of went there and just found ourselves there, really. And
now, how old were you when you guys did that?
19. Lee was still 18 because I'm a couple months older than him.
Right.
Brian was 20.
That's crazy. And I heard that you were just like living in the park.
Yeah, we slept outside. We slept in movie theaters. We you'd find like a house that had been taken over, and there was a couch in a corner somewhere. Squat houses they had there. When there was an abandoned house, and just 20 people would move in until someone chased them away.
Right.
So we fell in with a gang that was doing that, and it was just crazy times.
Now, were you guys having fun at this point, or were you like, "This is terrible. Let's go back home"?
Well, it's cool for a minute, but nobody likes really being hungry at the end of the day. We were young. Like if we went back to Massapequa, I'm sure we could have gotten our jobs back at playing at the bars.
Right.
Maybe try again to like get a record deal, and maybe But we didn't want to go home with our tail between our legs for a start. Particularly, we didn't have the money to get back.
Right.
So really, the only way, even if we wanted to go back, the only way would have been to do what you know how to do. You couldn't get a job because you were American, you were a foreigner.
Right.
Foreigners there, right? So like you couldn't get a job in a store. So the only thing you could really do was try to get enough gigs and save the money somehow and get a plane ticket back, So we eventually got a few gigs, knocked on doors, hassled people, went to the other gigs and found out who the booking agent for the little pub was. This kid give us a job. So after about 3-4 months, we managed to get a few jobs, the opening act and all that. And then our fate was in our own hands a little bit at that point because we knew we were good at it, And we looked kind of outrageous, and we had met some people because we were hanging around the clubs and parties. So when we finally played, those guys finally got a job. Let's go check them out, And we delivered.
Yeah.
And quickly there was like a big buzz about it, and the talk, our thoughts at that point didn't change to how do we get back home. We toughed this out a little longer. We might wind up with record contracts,
Right,
So
right.
we just, and by that time we'd met a few people who would, the couch kind of thing. We were elevated to the couch. So
then,
and like at the same time, you're 19 years old, you're going out at night. We were a little bit of, at this point, characters around town, so we were welcome to go to any gig we wanted or get into the clubs for free. So you're enjoying that part of it.
Yeah, that's fun at this point. Then, yeah. Now,
and the people we knew at that time would have been, the people who were hanging out that we knew were Chrissy Hine and the Pretenders, Lemmy, who was still my buddy, the guys from the Clash, and the Sex Pistols guys. And we were just that's the people who were our like peers at that point,
Right. That's what I heard.
You hang out with, I'm sleeping on Lemmy's couch tonight. That's an adventure, So we fell in with some cool people, and we were good. That was really the bottom line. There's no. The story doesn't go any further if we weren't good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you could get the gig and then, okay, it's just another band. But,
and like
the Stray
said,
Cats went many things, but the Stray Cats were not just another band.
Right.
It was, like it or not, it's very different and revolutionary at the time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. At that time, and you guys had everything, like you said. You were great musicians. You had the look, and it was completely different than anything else out there. So it must have been awesome over in London. When did it turn the corner? Because I heard the Rolling Stones come to see you. All these big bands come to see you. When did it turn that you got their contract?
And one night we did a club there, not a pub, it was a nightclub, and all the guys from the Rolling Stones came. They heard about it. They're very hip guys still, They know what's new, and they loved it because that's their roots.
Absolutely.
Their roots, Buddy Holly and Little Richard and Elvis and Chuck Berry. So, and they loved it. And there was paparazzi there. So all of a sudden, the next day, in the newspapers, there's like these 3 guys from New York who are homeless, and the Rolling Stones are there drinking champagne. And it was a picture in the paper. So,
so now you recorded 2 albums when you're in London, right? And they were big over there, right?
Yeah.
But did they make it in U.S. also?
Yeah, but they weren't released in the U.S. It was funny when you signed record contracts back then. It was pretty much there were two parts of a contract. There was a U.S. contract and there was like rest of the world contract. Finally, after 2 albums, they made a compilation of the first 2 albums.
And that's Built for Speed, right?
That's the first, and that's Built for Speed, exactly.
Yeah.
I think part of the spark in between all that was MTV.
Oh, yes.
We were tailor-made for MTV. We had a look, we had a sound, we were young, we were dressed up. It had all the little ingredients needed, kind of. And the time was right for change, I think, in the States at that point,
Yeah, everything was perfect.
And a bunch of bands at that exact time from England were coming over, and we were kind of like almost part of that.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
American guys,
Yeah. Now, the one thing I was always interested in, how did you come up with standing up and playing the drums like that? I don't recall seeing anybody doing that before you. Did you invent that or see someone else doing it?
Saw a photograph of Gene Vincent in the blue cap.
Right.
A tiny little photograph on the back of the album. There was no, Wikipedia. You couldn't really. You had to trust whatever back could find. Any scrap of evidence of what these guys looked like and what it was. So we saw the drummer from Gene Vincent, Dickie Harrell, who became a friend of mine. He was standing up. We said, "Wow, that looks so cool. What if he?" And we were playing so much on Long Island at that point, 4 sets a night, 5 nights a week, all over, that he could experiment a little bit.
Okay.
Put the drums on, and the next set we'll move it on to the other side. And I'm left. That's why I stood on the other side of Brian. That's why we did it. That's why it's lined up in that direction because I play left-handed. So, so it was we had a lot of time to learn, and a lot of opportunity to check it out. And when we came up with having the 3 guys across the front, no one in the back, everyone standing, we knew we were on to a stew that no one had tasted before.
That's genius.
Got all the ingredients now. This is something that we can really run with. And again, it wasn't so much a contrived plan. It was just organic. It was happening naturally. And
you notice, if you see now, pretty much every rockabilly band in the world actually does that now. They stand up and do that. So that's a great compliment to you.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to have launched it. I'm happy to have done it. And even before rockabilly caught on, so everyone in every video on MTV, you see most famous rock bands, in the video, all the drummers stand up.
Yeah. You guys did a lot.
In the video, I was doing it for real.
Yeah, you guys, you brought back rockabilly. The music might have died without that. You were the first really to have tattoos. Started this huge craze. Now everybody's got tattoos. And at this point, you guys started getting huge and stuff. You're playing all over. You're opening for the Rolling Stones, playing for everybody. And then you played at the US Festival where there's I don't even know how many people there. I think 500,000 or something like that. What is that like?
Yeah, it was some crazy thing. Hundreds of thousands of people. It went on for 2 miles.
What's that like when you're on that stage looking at that sea of people?
This is what we've been working for. We wanted to bring rockabilly music to the masses. Right. And I don't know if up to 200,000 people, 500, knew that we're playing a Johnny Burnett song right now, but they knew it was rockabilly and it was American, and we had brought it. We kind of achieved mission accomplished. We brought it back to the mainstream. Right. We have a rockabilly record that's in the charts, AM hit record charts. And playing in front of the people, and you look over and those are the same guys that I was in the 5th grade with. And it was that was a little bit of that was our day.
Yeah. So, and at the opposite of this, I actually remember seeing you guys in Valley Stream, Long Island once, right after Built for Speed came out at a movie theater called the Rio. Do you remember playing there?
No, how come we were there?
I don't know. It was it was a converted movie theater, right next to Slip Disc Records in Valley Stream, Long Island. And
maybe we did an in-store or something. You know who's a buddy of mine? It's Fred Armisen. You know him?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, he's from Valley Stream.
Oh, okay.
And he's got an original record that I think he was at that gig or came to I think we might have done a signing at the record store.
Yeah, possibly.
He was trying to remember, and we're buddies now, and he had the original. So I said, I'm glad I was nice to you back then, you know?
Yeah, so...
But yeah, we used to, you know, and we were looking after ourselves half the time, so we you know, did crazy things. Yeah, let's go play back home. Okay, let's go. You know?
So now let's get to this book now, because last year this book came out. Is called A Stray Cat Struts: My Life as a Rockabilly Rebel. So tell us what we can expect in this book. I have not had a chance to read it yet.
Well, all the stories are in there about, you know, starting on Long Island and what was going on, and all the stuff that I've been telling you now, like a quick little Reader's Digest version. In the book, we go in and explain, I go in and explain who was there and, you know, what was going on, and then you know, the stories about Lemmy, who was my real good buddy. And
yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I saw
him a lot.
You've played a lot with
he was
Lemmy.
one of my best friends. And you know, and then we were in '81. We didn't sign with when we met the Stones. They wanted us to be on their label. They had their own label, but again, we couldn't get it together, and time was ticking. We had to get it, you know, and but they liked us, and we remained kind of friendly with them. And then when they did their tour in '81, they asked us to open up a bunch of shows. So we were 1981. We didn't have the record released in the States, and we were touring with the Rolling Stones, which is, you know. It would be smart to have your record out when you did something like that. But again, it was... So all the adventures with the Stones are in there.
Oh, nice.
And then we came back to the States. I came to L.A. in 1981, 82, and I just stayed. And it's my town now, you know, and just... L.A. in the 80s, 90s, fantastic place, and I opened a nightclub that was right on the Sunset Strip for 20 years, and so the stories of that, a lot of, you know, adventures happening then, and at the end of this, and by this time I have it settled, and I'm like dragging it like a little boy through all these adventures with me, and that's in there, and how I met my former wife, who I'm still very close to, Britt Eklund, who was.
Of course, yeah.
And we got married, and we lived in L.A. and in London, a kind of gypsy, kind of, you know, crazy life with this little boy with us. Just, you know, it's been an interesting rock and roll life. And
yeah, absolutely.
You know, and like a lot of the people who we mentioned, who we first became friendly with, we're still friendly with. Mm-hmm. They're still my same friends that I had all these years, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you know, and the band has its ups and downs. We don't work for a while, and like even now we're starting to bubble. Everyone's getting in touch a little. We're going to play, and it just seems like you know, again, just another roller coaster ride. And in between Stray Cats tours, story of my life, you have to do other stuff.
Right. So
you know, that's when the adventures happen, when you're trying to get something else together.
Because I was talking to Glenn Matlock a couple of weeks back, and he said he's doing a project with you.
Glenn Matlock is staying in my house. He's in the room right next to me.
Oh, awesome. And
that's so funny.
I heard you guys doing, with Earl Slick, of course, you did that song Happy, and I'm going to play that on the show later.
Sure. Yeah,
but that was amazing. I hope, are you guys going to be touring at all?
Hopefully. I just saw Slick last week again. Like Glenn and Slick, these are the guys that are our friends my whole life almost, you know, and I saw Slick was just doing the Bowie tribute, and they were here in L.A., and we just went to see him last week, and we did some shows, I think, last year, and do some over the summertime.
Are you guys going to be doing a Stray Cats reunion? It's like talk is all out there now. Is that definite or still in talks about it?
Well, you know, I hope so. I say yes, you know.
Yeah, all right. I can't wait for that.
I think now they just see what the interest is and who, and just make sure you put the time aside. And it's, you know, now it's at that point.
Oh, okay, great.
Next year, but like these little things that were so easy, like go play a gig somewhere. Now it's a very complicated process.
Right. But there's definitely interest in that, I'm sure. People always want to see that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. And that's the thing I'm the most flattered by. I mean, it's something that we did in high school, and like caused enough interest and, made a big enough dent in pop culture that people still are interested in it. And it brings happiness. I mean, the last time we toured, going and playing, I look in the front row and there's like big, tattooed, tough rockabilly guy with his wife just crying in the front row. It brings, and me too. I look over and it's the guys I've known my whole life, and this is what we're doing, and we're grown men now. It's
Yeah.
I'm in.
It's an amazing life you led, and I'm sure that's going to be an interesting book. So, who was the when you met your hero? Who were you most admired, and you enjoyed it so much? Who was that for you?
Well, there was a couple guys that really were what you wanted them to be. Like Keith Richards is that guy. he is the pirate guy, and he's gonna, hand you a bottle of whiskey and you're gonna take a shot and then you're gonna talk about rock and roll. He really is. Lemmy too, really. They are the real guys, but they're gentlemen at the same time. They're not, rude guys. They're very, like me, kind of. Like we're all characters, but like at the end of the day, I'm like an Irish guy from Long Island.
Exactly.
Nana was very strict, and we know our kids.
Yeah.
But you can still be a character and have manners, and like the couple of guys that I've met that are very impressive like that are guys like Keith, guys like Lemmy, Glenn, he's in Sex Pistols, and he's,
yeah.
He cleans the dishes, he cleans, he does the dishes after he eats, and he makes the bed in the other room, and still we all are able to help each other out. I was in London over Christmas to do my book tour there, and I stayed at Glenn's house, and he has out some stuff in LA that he's got to do. He comes stays at my house, and everybody helps each other still,
That's great. Now, I know you're friends with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols too, and I saw a clip I was watching last night where he was interviewing you on his radio show, and he's sitting there with no shirt on, and he's burping into the microphone. He seems absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, he's the other one, yeah. But again, like the point is that like I'm trying to get in the book is that as crazy as it all is, it's like the normal stuff. It's still the guys you've known, 30 years. They just happen to be characters, all of us. Everyone's kind of got. I'm always trying to find a way to connect things rather than a way to say, well, this is so cool and that's not cool. No, it's all kind of life. It's all little adventures. I think anyone can write a book, really, if you just take it. A regular guy who goes to work every day on the train and comes back and hangs out. There's stories in that.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, but now
it's life. That story with me happened to be with Lemmy, but it could be any. You know what I mean? It's kind of how you tell the story because everyone's a character in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it must have been hard for you, though, because I know my own life during the 80s was a blur, and I can't remember anything. How you must have been partying a lot during this time with these guys, and how could you remember a lot of these stories?
Well, I had a little help. Britt was very good. I asked her a lot, but like certain times I said, now, was the car black or white? And she would say, no, Jim, the car was green. Like, wait a minute, I had it that wrong. But and somehow I went through boxes and boxes of photographs, and I saw a photograph that somehow I managed to save all this stuff.
Oh, great.
I would find something. Oh, I remember that kind of story. Oh, and again, since I stayed in touch with almost all these people, Lemmy, unfortunately, R.I.P. right before it came out. But
very sad.
Before that, I was able to call him and say, Len, remember that time? Where was the club that we were? And he, of all people, he had a good memory.
Yeah, I would imagine. Him and Keith can remember everything.
Yeah, and like the guys in the Stray Cats make fun of me because I have the memory as well. I remember the craziest, things like, I left my ATM card in the bank the other day, but, I remember, our Little League coach, So there's no... Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason for why you remember parts of it and other.
Well, sounds like it's a great book, and everyone should go out and get that book. And, of course, we'll be looking forward to the Stray Cats reunion and this Matlock and Earl Slick project. And you got anything else coming up soon that we should know about?
the stuff with Glenn and Slick probably, and Stray Cats will be next year, hopefully. So write to your congressman and ask about the Stray Cats. And that's I want it to happen. And it seems like the other guys don't have to pull the trigger, I suppose.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm going to go to Australia in May and play with some guys down there, a trio, rockabilly guys who again. People who were so affected by the Stray Cats, I go and I could get a band down there, and they know it note for note.
Yeah.
Excited to be there. And then over the summertime, doing some stuff with Glenn and in England, and just something always comes up.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
The Stray Cats thing will be planned hopefully, and
yeah,
there's always something to do with
You've been so busy since, the Stray Cats, in and out of the Stray Cats, and you haven't let up at all. So it's great to see you still doing it out there, and we can't wait to see you.
Yeah, those guys all work all the time,
Yeah, absolutely. So...
But, it's an expensive life, so you have to keep hustling it all up. I mean, if Stray Cats played every year, I would never have to do anything else. But when they play every 5 years, in between, you got to do stuff.
Yeah. So, and you made a lot of great music, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for calling in.
Well, thanks for this.
Yes. So, we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll be seeing you out on the road, hopefully soon.
Yeah, just stay in touch anytime. You got my info.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay in touch, buddy.
Yeah, anytime you're around New York area, I'll be there in the front row.
All right, buddy.
All right, thanks. Great talking to you, Jim.
All good. Thanks, Dennis.
All right, take care.
All right.
Bye. Hey, welcome back live from Dennis's house. That was our interview with Slim Jim Phantom of the Stray Cats, drummer extraordinaire. So we learned a lot, told us everything there is to know. I can't wait to read that book. It's called The Stray Cat Struts, My Life as a Rockabilly Rebel. So go out and get that, and you heard it here. The Stray Cats reunion is in full swing, hopefully in 2017, end of 2017. I'm not sure when, but he's working with Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols, Earl Slick of David Bowie fame, and, this book's got to be great. He's going to talk about his time with Lemmy, his time hanging out with Keith Richards, all this craziness during the 80s. So there's a lot of good stuff there. Glenn, Slim Jim Phantom was a great guy, great local guy from New York. So, you learned a lot, and go out and get all this stuff. If you don't have this album, The Stray Cats Built for Speed, you need to go out and get it. You need to get every Stray Cats album and all of his solo work and his album, his book, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to wrap this show up now. We're going to play some more music. How about the classic of classics, Stray Cat Strut by the Stray Cats, of course. And then we're going to play Happy by Glenn Matlock, Slim Jim Phantom, and Earl Slick. And we will see you next time on Live from Dennis's House, 474 The Mix.